Manager firings, they just aren't what they used to be. Just how effective is getting rid of the head man / maybe even hitting coach? We're going to discuss that and more on this Locked On MLB Squad Show.
Step up to the plate. It's the Locked On MLB Squad Show, sponsored by Gametime. From the Dodgers to the Astros, the Mets to the Rangers, and everyone else in the league, with the experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you the most comprehensive breakdown of all the action around the horn. We're coming in spikes up, no hurt feelings allowed, so squad up.
Welcome into the latest edition of the Locked On MLB Squad Show. This is all of the hosts invited, at least, and we've got 6 of the hosts from the Locked On MLB channel to talk about the state of the game. And quite frankly, the state of the game is who's fired their coach recently, who's about to fire their coach soon. Is that going to happen? We've got a lot to talk about where that's concerned. We're also going to get into some power rankings conversation because, of course, that's what we do. Who's the best? That's what we want to know, and that's what we're going to talk about. Here to talk about it with me, I am Jeff Carr, Locked On Reds co-host and Locked On MLB channel manager. Joining me is Sully from Locked On MLB. We got Jeff Snyder from Locked On Dodgers. We got Boney from Locked On A's, and the 2 men that know the most about at least the most recent firings, Gary Morgan of Locked On Pirates and Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies. Bud Black, Derek Shelton, unemployed. And when it comes to the state of the team in which they left, is it really that big of a deal? Is it going to make that big of a difference? Gary, I ask you first.
You asked me first because I've experienced it a couple days longer. I mean, honestly, the team looks different, Jeff. It does. We're seeing slightly different decisions than we've watched for 5 or 6 years now. We are seeing experimentations with players that we've wanted to see for a while. It's almost like he's been reading Twitter while he was waiting to get the job. But he's just suddenly doing things that we've kind of thought were common sense moves all along, pushing guys a little bit further based on his gut instead of just what analytics tells him to do. It's been exactly what we were hoping for. And the energy level's up. The competitive fight is up. Like they stood toe-to-toe with the Mets tonight, and fought through it. The offense still not talented, but they're fighting. They're fighting for this guy. It may not add up to anything, but it's a lot more fun to watch guys that look like they want to be playing the game I like to watch.
Paul, I know this. I saw a flyer going around social media. Can't confirm or deny whether the Rockies released it, but they're asking for help, additions for outfielders, pitchers, mascots, people serving drinks in the stands, all that stuff. Bud Black gone. How we feeling?
A move had to be made. I mean, this is a team that gave up 21 runs at home and also only had 3 hits in that game literally statistically, the Rockies are worse than the last year's White Sox team. This is a team that unless they go on some sort of a tear, which the odds are very much against them with, I think, the most difficult strength of schedule remaining in all of baseball for the rest of the year. I mean, you had to make this move, but here's the deal. The Rockies are they are so far behind the 8 ball in so many ways that just moving on from Bud Black will not immediately make this team really any sort of better. I mean, the good news is Warren Schaefer, the guy that's promoted, is got a lot of connections with the young Rockies. A lot of these young guys the Rockies are trying to get going. This is a guy that worked with them in the minors, great relationship with them. But I mean, let's just be honest. Bud Black was not the right move to start the season. The Rockies should have moved on at the end of last year and started this process before, instead of doing what they always do, which is throwing out the same thing and hoping that it works. This is a team that cut payroll. This is a team that made a bunch of steps. Bud Black was not put in a position to succeed. This is not all on Bud Black by any means, but something had to happen. Accountability had to be there had to be accountability when you give up 21 runs in the midst of one of the worst starts in baseball history. Now I think with the loss today, it might be cemented as the worst or still on par with a couple of those other ones there. So this team is so far broken beyond just the manager, but you had to make a move. And I hope that it means the young guys are going to be a little more excited to play. You know, some of the veterans too, mentioning that might be a kick in the butt, but this is a team that's going to have to consistently go up against the Dodgers, the Padres, the Giants, the Diamondbacks, and let alone all the other good teams throughout baseball. So will it change anything? I doubt it. There needs to be a lot that changes with the Rockies before we start seeing something big happen.
I always think it's funny when a manager gets fired or a head coach in the NFL, the tweet always says, "We have relieved him of his duties." I always think that's such a dumb euphemism. Oh, that job looks heavy. Let me hold that for you. But I think in Bud Black's case, it might be the best description I've ever heard. Like, if I'm Bud Black, I'm like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. He's so happy right now. He doesn't need the money, I'm sure. He's had a job for a long time. He can say, I didn't quit on these guys. I didn't quit on this ownership that never gave me a team that was ever going to compete. I didn't quit, but now I don't have to do it anymore. This is so nice.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mentioned the other day that Bud Black has had success as a manager. He's a former manager of the year. He had back-to-back winning seasons, postseason seasons.
First time in Rockies history.
With the Rockies. Came within one win of winning a division title in 2018. Just one win somewhere along the way, they would have won the division title in 2018. They were a pretty good team in 2018.
Yep.
The team fell apart. This is not his fault. I think that there are some teams that could use a veteran manager who maybe could do worse. Sometimes you want to have someone who's coming off of a bad experience. I'm reminding of when Terry Francona was picked up by the Red Sox after a pretty miserable experience with Philadelphia. Sometimes you want to say, hey, there's a veteran manager who's had success, who's had failures, who just got out of purgatory baseball-wise, not in terms of Denver, but in terms of a baseball experience. And, is there a team, I don't know, maybe whose logo is a bird in the American League East, who may have a managerial situation coming up? Could you do worse than bringing in a veteran manager? In terms of the effectiveness of this, the fact of the matter is, no, of course it wasn't all Bud Black's fault, but it's not all one. It's not like there's one baby Huey sitting on this team that's destroying them at this point. By the way, if anyone got the baby Huey reference, bless you, you're a Gen Xer.
I was just nodding along. I just was going with
okay.
Oh, Sully's here again.
But if it's multiple things that have to be changed, then start changing them. Yes, they should have let go of Bud Black at the end of last year. If they say, hey, look, we're going to rebuild, but you don't want to sit here for a rebuild. And if you want to stick around, we'll promote you to the vice president of Beans and Franks and Beans, so we don't have to relieve you of your duties. But we're going to get Warren Schaefer, who was actually, it's interesting, he is the first manager born during the COVID years. He was born. He's that young. He is a toddler. And he is so young. It really, my birthday is day after tomorrow, and I took a look at how young he is. And I'm like, wow, I'm now not even a young manager anymore. This is a sad day for your pal Sully. But something had to be done. And if it's multiple things, then start doing the multiple things. And the best time to have done this at the end of last year, the second best time is now. I don't find it interesting that Clint Hurdle is the consigliere of it, I mean, kind of sitting there waiting in the wings.
October is on.
But they had to do something, and it's clear the machine's broken. So just because you don't have Earl Weaver or John McGraw, that you can put in there doesn't mean you necessarily have to keep giving the car keys to a drunk. So you have to.
Is Tony La Russa available?
Oh, wow! I said, yeah.
Well, Terry Francona
Malone
is but isn't the main thing that needs to be done better ownership, Paul?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's what everyone calls for, and that's what it's at its core. I mean, unfortunately, the Rockies are a very fascinating team in which, over 26,000 people watch the Rockies get blown out by 21 runs. I mean, and as much as the opposing,
it was
38,000 one game, didn't they?
38,000.
I was at that game actually. It was the 30th. It was against the Reds. I mean, here's the deal: if the best thing that could happen for the Rockies, I think, in the big picture, is actually not Dick Monfort selling the team. It's Dick Monfort stepping away from all things baseball operations related. Keep doing what you're doing with the fan experience. Keep making Coors Field an elite place to go and enjoy an afternoon in Denver, and one of the best. I will stand by it. I mean, as much as people are going to hate me for this, for Rockies fans, because people want to boycott and all this stuff, Coors Field is one of the best baseball experiences that you can have. If it's a beautiful day in Denver, and if you're not a Rockies fan, your favorite team's in town, that's why all these people come. Denver is very much a place where a lot of people from all over the country live. So, I mean, just about every team. I mean, the Tigers had more fans than the Rockies did against that series. I mean, this is just a place that attracts baseball fans, and it would have Denver fully buy in. We've seen when the Rockies are good, Denver is right there behind them and ready to support. And this is a team hungry for it. And so I think Dick Monfort can continue to create an elite baseball experience and the stuff and all his other business operations and connections that he has around this at the town. But he's proven that he is not capable of running a baseball team, of being effective and putting the right people in charge. I as much as this opens the door for a new manager, I am very much waiting for a Rockies legend. I got a buddy named his name is Jordan, lifelong Rockies guy. He's just waiting for Vinny Castilla to get the call to be the next Rockies manager, or we're going to call Todd Helton up and he's going to come run the team or something like that. This is a team that needs to look outside of the organization, bring people with different perspectives in, and start changing the minds of the people at the top, because I don't have a lot of faith in the GM Bill Schmidt right now either. I mean, again, Bud Black's lost his job, but this is a GM that has re-signed a lot of people that haven't panned out. There's been injuries and other things. The draft class and his drafts still need to, we still need to give him time to see what actually happens with some guys that are exciting, but I don't know. It's again, yes, he does need to sell, but it's also, he talked about before, while he was crying foul and saying baseball's broken because the Dodgers can spend more money than everybody else, and that's why they can't compete with anybody. He was saying, ask me again in July how I'm feeling when it comes to reevaluating his position with the team. And I think he needs to really take that seriously. I mean, this is the time for change in Colorado is right now, because we're facing 3 straight 100-loss seasons, and maybe the worst season in baseball history. And you can't just sit there and say moving on from the manager and a bench coach and the hitting coaches. I mean, of course you got to clean house, but that's not enough. The issues with the Rockies go way, way higher.
I got a couple of questions. One about the difference of the front office and the dugout, and whether or not you do want your favorite player in that manager's seat coming up next. The MLB season is in full swing, and you've got NBA playoffs going on, NHL playoffs going on. There are so many ways to get in on the action over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You got to check out FanDuel right now, because if you're a new user and you place a $5 bet that wins, you get $200 in bonus bets back. Those odds are insane. And there's an interesting one. I'm looking at some futures here on Major League Baseball when it comes to the season, and there is an interesting race right now that a Miami Marlin is the favorite for. That's right. We're talking about Agustin Ramirez is the favorite for the National League Rookie of the Year. Currently, his odds are at plus 420, right ahead of Luis Angel Acuna over with the Mets at plus 550, and Dylan Cruz at 6-1. Roki Sasaki, he's fallen down to 4th in these rankings, plus 650, according to FanDuel. And if you want to jump in on that and the daily lines, the point spreads, the over-unders, the money lines that FanDuel has, and you're a new user, your first $5 bet that wins gets you $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of Locked On. We've got you covered every single day for your favorite baseball team, literally every single baseball team represented, and every game, every night on Locked On MLB Game Night. And then you got Sully's takes of the league at large on Locked On MLB every single day. Make sure that you're locked on your favorite MLB team. And I wanted to ask a couple of questions that play off of the manager conversation and kind of what we had. I want to start first because we had mentioned analytics, and I know Gary, you had mentioned, kind of a diversion away from where Derek Shelton was leading the team. I've seen that with the Reds and how the regime was ran under David Bell. I think Terry Francona uses analytics, but not to the extent that David Bell did. And of course, we have the man behind Moneyball with us here, Booney, talking about analytics. Is there a separation that you want to see from your favorite team where analytics are fine in the front office, but when you get down to the dugout, man, give me your gut, give me your feel for the daily outs and strikes and balls and all that stuff? I don't necessarily want to see that many analytics from the manager.
Absolutely. I mean, no question about it. And you were asking at the break, I mean, does it make a difference to have your favorite player or a favorite team when they're done playing as the manager? I want to get
into that. Yeah.
I think there's no question with regards to both sides. I think you need a little bit of gut in that dugout. Terry Francona would be somebody like that for me. Kotsay something like that for me too. Just kind of like a gutsy type of manager who's played the game at a very, very high level and just goes with gut. No question about it. It brings a little bit of identification to the team and sets a little bit of a culture to what the team's about. So 100%. I think that is extremely important in today's game.
I think that there's I'm not the biggest analytics guy in the world, mainly because I'm not interested. There's no microscope powerful enough to detect how little I care about predictive stats. I literally don't care about exit velocity. The idea of a true home run, I think, is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard, because I think Endy Chavez's catch was a true home run. So that should count as a true home run because it was over the wall. So therefore, that's a true home run. But I understand, first of all, it's a big sandbox. There's a lot of ways people can enjoy baseball. A lot of people do like the predictive stats, and I like the narrative. Other people don't. There's no wrong way to enjoy baseball. So I'm not saying they're dumb. No, this is not how I enjoy it. I do think that one of the problems that happens, and we saw this with Seattle, when they were like, you're hearing all the talk about they're bombarding the people with all this information and all these players you're almost giving them too much information. You have to adapt information. Everyone's always used analytics. Abner Doubleday, who didn't invent baseball, but I'm using that as an example, he had analytics. He said, he hit the turnip hard with the stick. Because runs batted in is a lousy predictive analytic, but it's an analytic. We've always used data to determine where you put players in a lineup and who pitches and this and then the other thing. So it's not that dirty a word. I want my front office to have all the information and to make sure the manager has all the information, and the manager has to know what to do with that information. Say, we can adjust this or do you want at this point, I'm not going to rest this person on this day. I'm not going to rest Ketel Marte against the Dodgers in a critical game there because the analytics showed us this is the day of rest. These are competitive players, and a lot of times it seems the analytics are about preventing something bad from happening instead of being aggressive and having something positive happen. Let's not have Blake Snell finish the sixth inning because the data shows he may fail, as opposed to I'm a competitor, I'm trying to save the damn World Series. I'll always go to that because that is, I think, the single stupidest managerial decision made in the 21st century.
Can we
yes, Grady Little existed.
The Dodgers won.
I mean, I have an offshoot of this. I mean, the Pirates also dismissed Radley Haddad. He was the link between analytics department and the manager. He was the game plan coordinator. Well, he was the one overloading these kids. He was the one overloading the bench in between at
Reds
bats.
did the same thing when they fired David Bell. They let go of their guy. Yeah,
deciding this guy can only go this long and stick to it no matter what. And that stuff is already in 4 games of Don Kelly gone. I mean, it's great for everybody in that room.
Can I one thing out? Like everyone talks about as if Billy Beane invented analytics. He didn't. We've had analytics for a long time, and we've had
Brad Pitt invented analytics.
That's true. But of course, the thing about Moneyball, the elephant in the room, and it's not Stomper, but the elephant in the room for Moneyball was the steroid era. So yeah, you didn't want to steal bases because you had a bunch of guys who roided up the yin yang. So you wanted to make sure it was a 3-run home run. It didn't matter if they're on first base or second base. And the other thing was, and of course this was mentioned, I think there was one line in the movie Moneyball that mentioned, hey, we have 3 Cy Young contenders. 60% of our games are being started by Cy Young contenders.
Right.
Maybe that's why we're winning a bunch of games, not because the dude from Guardians of the Galaxy got a walk.
Well, and I think this is a benefit for a team like the Dodgers. Why Dave Roberts has been so successful. I mean, he's been able to manage a team with a lot of personalities, a lot of talent, and be successful with it. Obviously, what the more titles would be probably the biggest criticism, the want for more with a team like that. But I think you do have that mix there where you have the abundance of resources, and Dave Roberts, there's been some criticisms, maybe I guess with how they handle pitching, but the injuries usually push them to the points that they've had to make the choices that they've had. So I think there's the benefit of having a manager that probably, takes in a lot of the information that the Dodgers give him and all that access that they have. But if you need him to make a baseball gut call, like he'll probably be the one to do that. I mean, and just to circle it back to, do you want a lot of analytics? I'd like the Rockies to be involved in analytics a little bit more. This is a true story, folks. If you don't know this, the Rockies used to have their analytics department also work laundry and do laundry for the team. So that is a real story. You can look up a small analytics team, and this is a team that hasn't been able to keep smart analytics based people within their organization. They've had people leave within under a year to do stuff. So I would like the Rockies to start bringing people in to start cracking the code of Coors Field. But I also think there's a lot of benefits to your Dave Roberts, your Terry Francona's, your stuff. But for me as a Rockies fan, there's no way I want a former player right now. I want a different mind. Or if you are going to go within, like, go with this guy that maybe can really rile up your youngsters. But I'm pleading for the Rockies to finally look from outside the organization to get some new ideas.
Can I also? Jeff Snyder. I'm going to jump in and defend Dave Roberts, especially as I always do because I love the 04 Red Sox. But I don't want to hear any more criticism about how he handles pitching staffs. Last year in the World Series, he didn't have Gavin Stone. Tyler Glasnow was in a full body cast. The Clayton Kershaw looked like looked like the dude from the Big Lebowski. Ohtani wasn't pitching. Bobby Miller wasn't pitching. They had a bullpen game, not because it was an emergency and they had an 18-inning game. No, we're scheduling in a bullpen game.
4 times in the postseason. Yes. 4 bullpen games. And I'll tell you, the one mistake I can say, the one thing I blame on Dave Roberts over the years is a time that he went with his gut over the analytics. And that's 2019 NLDS Game 5, when he tried to go on a Clayton Kershaw redemption tour, said, let's have Kershaw come in and close this game out instead of one of our 8 rested relievers. And they lost the game, and so when we talk about analytics, I think Dave Roberts is really good at taking the analytics, understanding his team, who his people are. Every time Dodger fans jump on Dave Roberts for some stupid, indefensible decision, we find out later, oh, here's why that made sense. This guy, his baby was sick at home. He only got 2 hours of sleep last night, or things that only a manager knows. Fans think they know everything, but only a manager knows. And so, I think Dave Roberts has done great at balancing the people and the numbers. And nobody's perfect, but, he's pretty close.
And there's some stat head who's going to try to create a babies above replacement crying stat to sort of put that in there to show that if they had done that with another baby, that would have worked. By the way, he went for his gut when he had to do back-to-back bullpen games because he scheduled a bullpen game in Game 4 of the World Series, and then Game 5 was a disaster for Flaherty, and so it had to be back-to-back bullpen games. And he had to, analytics be damned, he squeezed that extra inning out of Blake Trinan.
The guy who was calling that game for the Dodgers on the radio was texting me during the game. What's he doing? Why did they pull Jack so soon when they know they just, and I told him, hey, it's going to work out. It's going to work out. I didn't think it was going to work out in Game 5. I had confidence the Dodgers were going to win one of the next 3 games. That's all. And that's what I told him. Dave Roberts isn't trying to win today. He's trying to win one of the next 3 games, whichever one that is. That's all that matters because that's how the World Series is decided.
No one has ever gone broke betting against the Yankees defense. So if you say, hey, the Yankees defense is going to blow it, I'm going to put my money on the Yankees defense blowing it. There you go.
Jeff Carr was told there would be no math.
It's a lot of math. And
That's analytics. That's
no
analytics.
one betting against to fail. Lot going on there. I know this. I don't ever want Barry Larkin near the manager seat. I'm going to tell you why coming up next, and we'll talk about why we think the team that is the best in Major League Baseball is Do you know if you can't watch us on YouTube, if you can't watch your favorite Locked On podcast on YouTube, you can listen to it on your favorite podcast app. Literally all of them. Full stop. I don't know anyone that we aren't on, so go check it out today. So yes, I mentioned the favorite players, the manager thing. There was a little bit of a discussion for the last few years when David Bell would do something silly and people were like, oh, he's on the hot seat. And Barry Larkin's ready to go. He's in the broadcast booth. He's getting ready. He's just going to move right down to the dugout. And I never wanted to see it. And honestly, I don't know. He might be a good manager, but I know he's a Hall of Fame player. And I know he's one of my favorite players that I've ever watched play the game. And I don't want to see him fail as a manager because that completely resets his legacy. For me, I think that happens with any player. The Reds saw this in the early 90s. I was a baby, but they saw this in the early 90s with Tony Perez. Tony Perez is still one of the most beloved Reds of all time. And I think that the management of the team at the time like saw this going in a very, very bad direction. So before it really hit the bad times and the rough stretch, they fired him too early. So now the narrative is, well, they fired Tony Perez too early. But I think the whole point with this is like, your favorite player being the manager of your favorite team completely resets that player's legacy for you. And I never want to see Barry Larkin put himself in that situation.
I just think the best players have a real hard time teaching people that don't have the same talent as them how to do things.
It's
I
why
just don't think it translates.
Yeah, Bobby Bonds was a great hitting coach, despite being a pretty flawed hitter. You know, you look at, I mean, how many managers were backup catchers when they were playing? You know, like you weren't even good enough to play every day, but they watch the game, they understand the game on a different level. And yeah, I mean, has there ever been Joe Torre, I guess, is the best example of a guy who was a great player and a great manager.
Frank Robinson had some success as a manager, but not, but not, like overwhelming. But he had a couple of good years as a manager.
Gil Hodges, I guess.
Bob Lemon was a Hall of Fame pitcher, and he managed the Yankees to the World Series and was a good manager elsewhere. But the point is taken. It wasn't Mickey Mantle or Joe DiMaggio who became the great manager. It was Billy Martin, who was, now Yogi Berra never really got his fair shake. He managed the Yankees to the World Series in '64, but he clashed with his former backup, Ralph Houck, who was the GM and fired him after losing Game 7 of the World Series. He managed the Mets to Game 7 of the World Series, but he clashed with management then. And, of course, George Steinbrenner fired him 2 weeks into the '85 season. So we never got to see if Yogi would have become the great manager. But the point is, I think you could make a very strong argument that the greatest manager of all time is Earl Weaver. And I don't think he played in the majors. Tommy Lasorda was a journeyman pitcher, and he was one of the best men. Tony La Russa, who I have issues with, but has undeniably had success, was a backup catcher.
Whitey Herzog,
Jim Leland.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Francona was the biggest star in college and flopped as a player.
Don Mattingly recently. He's probably the best one I can think of recently, and he didn't do that great.
Yeah, Mattingly was much better as a player than as a manager.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, I told you my father's story about my father, may he rest in peace, was the biggest San Francisco Giant fan in the world. And I remember in 2014 when the Giants were a wild card team and the Dodgers won the division, and I was going into the playoffs. I said, Dad, the Dodgers could be tough. The Dodgers would be tough. And my dad just turned to me and said, Paul, he didn't call me Sully because he also was a son. I said, Paul, don't worry about the Dodgers. They have an idiot for a manager.
And
lo
we
and
saw that
behold,
in the 7th inning of game 1 of the game that does not exist.
Yep.
Don't you think it matters
We'll
on the
Men in
state
Black that. We'll Men in Black that from you right now. Boom.
it matters of the state of the franchise? I mean, like, for example, Paul and Gary, you guys wouldn't, just to bring some energy to the team, to the franchise, a former player like a Todd Helton, Gary, a former player like a, I don't know.
Andrew McCutcheon gets brought up
Andrew
here.
McCutcheon?
Andrew McCutcheon.
He gets brought up here all the time. And honestly, if you
I don't
know
think
him,
he'd want
no.
to. Yeah.
I don't think
It'd be
really.
horrible
I don't
to
think
have
they're the
it.
solution, but I think it brings some excitement to the fan base. Someone that brings identification to the team and so forth. I don't know. That's just kind of my take.
I don't need
When
a
you-
team that already
when you're-
leans in enough to throw in the old stars of the past. Like, one, they don't even have a team Hall of Fame, but they'd rather be like, hey, we're gonna have all these guys involved doing this. And I mean, no, like, please go. Like,
Got you.
I don't want to see a Rocky take over the Rockies. That's
I
my
got
What
biggest
about Nefi
fear.
Perez?
Yeah,
But that would be someone.
Torrey Alba. Bring him in over here and
Torrey
add
Alba.
that
The love child of Joe Torre and Jessica Alba?
Like, you're better off.
October team.
You're
we had
better
somebody
off-
talking about Yogi Berra and God knows what from the 60s. We got a little bit of everything.
But you're
But,
better off
I,
getting someone like Chris Iannetta or someone who wasn't the star of the team.
We got Jordan Pacheco. I mean, if like you guys are mentioning, like, backup guys that like didn't really ever break out, but Jordan Pacheco has got a lot of hype kind of about what he's been doing for some of the hitting approach at the minor league levels. He got called up to be the hitting. Now that Clint Hurdle is now the bench coach, because he was the hitting coach after the Rockies fired the hitting coach. So the Rockies are they're kicking the tires on some of these retreads. And I do need to issue a correction, by the way. 38,423 people actually watched the Rockies lose 21-0. So I was off by 12,000 people. So in case you're curious if Dick Momfort's going to sell his team anytime soon, no, he's fine.
Sell out crowd. You gotta love that. Real quick before we go, give me one liner. Best team in Major League Baseball. Paul, start us off.
I don't know about best team, but I want to give shout outs to two teams that I don't think we've really talked about much at all on here, and it's the Mariners and the Tigers. I think two teams that are really looking to put together full seasons that could be really big for both of their franchises. I think the Mariners are showing that, hey, they're going through, even though that ace pitching staff has had a little bit of some bumpy roads, they're getting the offense. They're having guys step up. It's pretty nice to have the best catcher in baseball with Cal Raleigh, and I think it's pretty safe to say that he is the best catcher in baseball there. And the Tigers, I mean, they just rolled the Rockies, and they also just rolled the Red Sox as of this recording as well. Two teams that, again, I'm not sitting here saying best teams in baseball, but two teams I really hope that they continue to put stretches of really good baseball together and make it interesting, because I think they're two areas that could be really cool to see them in the postseason and see them play an interesting ball at the end of the year.
Gary, who you got?
Well, that was a lot more than one line. I'm going to go. I'm going to say the Mets. Maybe it's recency bias, but my goodness, they don't look like they have any holes anywhere right now.
Booney, who you taking?
I was trying to be creative and come up with something different, but you got to go Dodgers until they're not. And on top of that, they have the best players in all of baseball, and they've created a culture that no one else has yet to figure out as well to copycat. So right now it's the Dodgers until they're not.
Yeah, it sort of feels like everybody's just keeping the spot warm. If the Dodgers aren't in first place in the NL West, it's just going to be that way. Jeff, I guess maybe give us your thoughts.
To quote the great philosopher Richard Flair, to be the man, woo, you got to beat the man. It's the Dodgers until it's not, bro.
Sully, who are you taking, man?
Well, if Stephen Kolek turns into an ace like he did against the Rockies, suddenly the Padres have another ace. Obviously, it's the Dodgers, but I will just say, for the Cardinals and for the Minnesota Twins, it's never the wrong time of the year to go on an 8 or 9 game winning streak. And those two managers were on the hot seat, and suddenly they won more than a week of games, and they're not updating their LinkedIn page right now.
Rockies 3 8-game losing streaks this year, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Mazel tov.
I think that, there's no bad time to go on an 8-game winning streak, especially if you're a team that's in either of the central divisions. The central divisions, maybe the AL in a better way, the NL Central in a weirder. maybe worst way. It's going to be a strange division to watch all year long. I don't think either team either division has a team. But the Tigers, I
Tigers
think
look good, man. Tigers
don't
look
hate
good.
that. But even then, I still think the Mariners are better than them. I still think I take the Yankees over the Tigers. And I think that probably, is it going to be a West Coast World Series? Mariners, Dodgers? Kind of looks like that before Memorial Day. I'll have to see about that, though. Thank you so much for checking out this edition of the Locked On MLB Squad Show. We're going to have a full power rankings on the next one. Really wanted to get into the managerial discussion of it all, and definitely a lot of fun talking about managerial firings. But I know this. Nobody's going to be able to hire Terry Francona because I didn't even think the Reds were going to hire Terry Francona, and they did. And that's what happens when you fire your manager at the right time. That's going to do it for us, though. Thanks for checking out the Squad Show. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Baby Huey.